All right, welcome back to another episode with myself and Ted here on Growth.Ventures. And we are always trying to talk about ways that you can grow your business and using marketing technology. Woo.
Yes.
And so, what we want to kind of focus on today is lead generation. Okay, it sounds a little boring, but hey, that's what keeps all of our kind of B2B companies going, isn't it? Is
That's right.
leads in the door.
Lead machines.
Yes, I can't tell you all. I mean, over the last few months, I have been getting so many LinkedIns these days on, hey, let us help you out with your LinkedIn generation. I mean, I am getting LinkedIn after email after LinkedIn after email. It's
Mhm.
just nonstop right now. I'm like, oh my word, this is crazy. And I know good and well these people are just doing data farming and doing out emails that are probably worthless. And so, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of it going on.
Yep.
Definitely. And so, one of the things that, there's one of the things I wanted to kind of dig into specifically today on our webinar is, we used to, I used the word webinar. I want to talk about
Webinars.
webinars. So not too long in the past, webinars used to be huge revenue,
Yeah.
huge lead
Right.
generators for businesses. I was at a software company, an international software company, and we did webinar after we did so many webinars. It was crazy.
Yeah. Marrying that multimedia though, PowerPoint and voice, and putting it
Yep,
on the web. And having a live audience there with you was,
definitely.
part of it.
Yep, and they usually ran for 30 minutes to an hour, and I
Oh, an
attended
hour long.
I mean, I learned so much from webinars. It was just unreal. Like, HubSpot, I used to attend every single HubSpot webinar that ever came out. They were fantastic. It was a huge learning experience.
Yeah.
Um, but,
And even you don't hear about them. I mean,
no, not as much anymore.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, they
So
definitely.
webinars, it seems like they went by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah.
They became so vendor focused. Look what we can do. We've got this amazing technology, and and they were hour long. I think people got pretty burnt out on them over time. They lost their value. Now I know
Sure.
they're still put on. I still get requests for coming to join a webinar or things along those lines. And there's occasionally that I'll attend a webinar, but
Yeah.
hardly any anymore. I mean, you used to put on a whole bunch, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I used to put on them all the time, and send out a poll question after this slide. Let's see what the audience is thinking. Well,
Yep.
how long did everyone stay on? What was the
Hmm.
stats with that webinar? And
Sure.
I think even now it's almost some of the virtual events kind of group those together.
True.
In a bigger sense, but
Right.
yeah, one-off webinars you don't see them more often. I think that's just because the medium has, and the audiences
Mhm.
really don't want to sit tethered to their desktop that much
Yeah,
anymore.
they really don't. They really don't. And then, after your webinar was over, what did you do then? You went and downloaded that email list, all those
That's
attendees, and what'd you do?
You had to send it to the business owner,
Yep.
whoever, send it and
Yep.
tee up that email. Thanks for
And they were getting
unless you
salesy.
build out an automation, plan, but
Mhm. Yep. Those emails, if you attended a webinar, you knew you were going to get a sales call within a few days,
oh yeah,
every single time. Yeah.
oh yeah,
Which,
for
I
sure.
mean, I can understand that. I mean, this is what businesses do because, it was a very, and is still a very powerful vehicle for lead generation. If you can capture these people. Wow. But I think that to me, I hardly attend any of them anymore.
Yeah,
But I think what has happened is that we've seen a transition to something more useful, which is exactly what we're doing here, podcasting. I think webinars have truly transitioned over to being podcasts now. Because to your point that people didn't want to sit in for something really long, they've kind of got burnt out. They don't have time anymore. We've continued to get busier, but you
mhm.
can consume a podcast whenever you
Yeah, on
want.
your own time. More
Exactly.
importantly, you subscribe to it, you get it and play it when you're ready.
Hmm.
You're not constrained by the be there at 2 p.m. What's the best time to have a webinar?
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
when everyone's ready for their coffee.
Yeah. I find them more educational and more entertaining. Usually it's two or three people that are on a
Yeah,
podcast talking about a particular topic, and they're a little bit more engaging and interesting to listen to than sitting in behind a webinar for an hour. listening to somebody talk on pitching their company.
Oh, and that, you just mentioned it more fun, webinars being so dry and rehearsed. Like
Yes,
they rehearsed. I mean,
they
we
were.
talked about a topic, but we're not, sitting there
Yeah.
saying, when the next slide needs to be, when I say next slide,
Flip the next slide, please, please flip the next slide. Somebody
yeah,
pay
next
attention.
slide, next slide.
Oh, wrong slide. Oh, hey,
Yeah.
always love the slide. Hey, here's all the people that do business with us. You got it every time. It showed a bazillion logos all over the screen.
Yeah.
Oh my word, yes. Oh man.
Yeah, but podcast, being the freedom and really just your mobile devices. I mean, there are still some live engagements that happen, but it might not be necessarily the business driver that you need to build that audience.
Right, right. A webinar, what I know when I did webinars in the past, what we usually do is we'd take them, convert them into on demand, and then put them behind a form so that, hey, you missed it, come fill this form out, and the future person could come watch it. And now it's like, hey, the podcast is out there. Okay, it's great content. You can come listen to go listen to the one that we did 60 episodes back and go listen to that because it was pertinent to your particular topic, and they're searchable and they're found across many, 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 many platforms now.
Yeah.
So
And searchable, you use that, audio, voice to text, translate it,
right.
transcribe it. Now you've got, the content that you've talked about.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the first things I do for our podcast here is I take and generate the transcript for it, create a blog post about it. And that's kind of the beauty of the podcast now, is that it is very omni-channel. Yeah, I know that's a kind of an overused word these days, but you literally can take a podcast episode, create a blog post, create shorts on YouTube, create a full YouTube video, post it out to social media, take snippets to create memes if you want to. There's all sorts of things you can do with this content to get in front of an audience. It's very versatile when it comes to a form of content.
Yeah. And then that content obviously is your driver for the lead gen.
Exactly.
That's kind of coming back to where we started this is,
right.
You still want to be able to, get business opportunities out of some of this content you're putting out there. And
so I do think podcasts, I think podcasts are a little bit harder than just, when it came to webinar, usually it was a kind of a sales focused or knowledge focused webinar. And you knew those people were, they're probably decent quality leads, as long as you got the right audience in. Podcasts are a little bit harder, but because it's omni-channel, you have the chance to reach a much wider audience and capture that audience. So they're following you. If your content's good anyway, they're following you on YouTube, they're following you on Spotify or wherever they're consuming their podcasts. And so you have the chance to have a much larger audience using a podcast, a dedicated audience, as long as you are dedicated doing a regular podcast and creating that content, which of course takes its own level of effort, but it is absolutely totally worth it for lead generation.
Well, and I even know, LinkedIn, now they're getting into that, video side of things. It could be posted, it can be live, it can be, post live event that you can get into that.
Well, that's actually a really good point. I mean, what we're doing here with this is recording it and putting it out later, but I could click of a button and we could be broadcasting this live to many different video channels all at the same time, LinkedIn, YouTube, and there's a whole bunch of others, which we could actually go live with this. So you've got that opportunity to, hey, do an announcement ahead of time. Hey, I've got Ted Jones. We're going to be talking about blah, blah, blah on next Friday. Come join us. I mean, really, you can do this kind of stuff and then make it on demand however you want it as a podcast. The modern version of podcast used to be just an audio, but now kind of people have moved it to being content across many different platforms, but it's recorded like the two of us are doing here right now.
Well, and even going back to the webinar side of things, recording those, there was times the dreaded how many attendees are we going to have on this? Oh my gosh, we only got 5 people on here. But nowadays those 5 people are your engaged people.
They
Those
are.
are your
Sure.
ones, that are like, okay, well, let's engage with them a little bit more.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
but we would also record,
Mhm.
we'd use that same workflow,
Right.
that you might use for a webinar to record something like this, right? The
Yes.
tools aren't that different unless you
No,
really want to get into
they really
having
are.
a live audience, and have them sitting there
Mhm.
while you talk.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. The tools are pretty much the same. Now you've got better mics these days. And like you
Yeah,
said, you can do live streaming and all this kind of stuff. We've got better cameras to use. We can have as many people on these things you want. I mean, Zoom webinars. You can have an enormous audience on these things.
that's right.
But so you can still classify this as a webinar. But the reality is, a podcast is a much more useful tool as long as you've got a good topic to talk about, and as long as you're dedicated to doing it in the long run. Kind of the scary thing is people aren't dedicated to it. You have to be dedicated to it. The average number of episodes in a podcast is 6. That's it. People give it up because like, oh, I can't generate an audience, but they really truthfully didn't give it a try. You
Yeah.
have to be in it you have to be dedicated to it for the long haul. So
Sure. Well, and then that gets back to engaging your audience and, learning topics, right? Like
mhm.
feeding back into,
Yeah, it's gotta be
what
useful. Oh yeah.
the what the audience is really interested in.
Right. Yeah. You've
So,
got to be on topic. You can't be salesy. People are going to turn off sales junk
yeah,
in a heartbeat. You got to be entertaining. You've got to be useful. You got to solve problems for people.
that's right.
And that's the problem we're solving today is, yep, switch from webinars to podcasts and give it a real shot because it
And
does.
reuse that content and
Mhm.
reuse that
Absolutely.
content
Reuse your content.
for, blog posts,
Mhm.
newsletters, and driving
Absolutely.
those leads back to
Yeah.
your,
Yes. Always, always, always drive people back. So come watch us on YouTube, subscribe to us, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our newsletters, follow us on social media because this is where we post all our content regularly. And that's where you usually end up on telling people in order to get people to join your audience. You want an interactive audience. And if they're commenting out there on those channels, you interact with them.
that's right.
Omni-channel.
Quickly interact with them quickly too.
Yes.
Don't,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
whether
Don't hit it.
positive or negative, comments
Yeah.
are what engages the community, right?
Yes, it's
So
part of the algorithm on your content being discovered is that you are engaged with your
that's
audience.
right.
That's
Don't
part of the
forget that part.
algorithms. So, yep, definitely.
Cool.
All righty then. Well, I guess that's the end of our episode. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us
And
on
tell us
social
what
media.
topics you want to hear about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just kind of keep coming up with stuff, but if you're following us, please in the comments, post in things that you'd be interested in hearing about. We're happy to hop on here and talk about them. We'd love that actually. That'd be fantastic.
That's
But
right.
because we just like talking about all sorts of cool tech stuff. So
That's right.
okay. All right, everybody. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you following us. Thanks.
Yeah.